At my own wedding, my mother smiled for the cameras, while publicly giving my gift to my sister. That's when I realized I wasn't the bride. I was the sacrifice. The scent of frosting and perfume hung thick in the air, sweet enough to choke on. Soft music floated through the ballroom, violins tracing the edges of conversation as Claudia Bennett stood beneath a canopy of roses and fairy lights, smiling for the cameras. Her cheeks ached from the practiced expression she'd been wearing since morning, but the crowd loved it, the picture of a perfect bride. She had almost begun to believe it herself. Then her mother leaned in, lips barely moving, smiles gleaming for the photographers. "We're passing the car his parents gave you over to your sister," Margaret said, her voice airy, as though she were commenting on the flower arrangements. For a heartbeat, Claudia thought she'd misheard. Her mother's tone was so casual, so rehearsed, that it sounded like she was announcing dessert. And beside her, Sabrina, sequined, sparkling, and smug, laughed softly. "Relax," she murmured, her laugh light enough to pass for affection. "It's just a car." No one else caught the exchange. The guests clapped as the band transitioned into another love song. But Claudia's stomach dropped, a cold, silent plunge that no one else seemed to feel. Across the room, Liam Carter, her new husband, stood frozen. His expression didn't shift, but his eyes, those calm, gray-green eyes, locked on her mother with a stillness that spoke volumes. He said nothing. He didn't need to. And that look, that quiet comprehension, changed everything. They say weddings reveal who really loves you. Claudia's revealed who never did. She had grown up in a house where fairness was a bedtime story, not a lived value. Margaret Bennett loved order, the kind that polished her image and silenced disagreement. Her perfection was a performance. Claudia had been part of the set dressing. Thomas Bennett, her father, believed silence solved everything. Whenever conflict brewed, he folded into his newspaper or retreated into the garage. And Sabrina, the delicate younger sister, was the family's golden child, the one for whom the world bent without question. Claudia had been the hinge that made it move. As children, Sabrina got the bigger bedroom because she was afraid of the dark. When she crashed her first car, Margaret blamed the rain. When Claudia worked double shifts to buy her own, Margaret called it character building. By 29, Claudia had built a life outside their narrative, a quiet rebellion stitched together through self-discipline. She was an interior designer known for precision and calm under pressure, the kind of woman who earned every inch of her space. Meeting Liam had felt like stepping into sunlight that didn't burn. He came from a family that believed in boundaries, not as barriers, but as respect. His parents, Robert and Elaine Carter, weren't wealthy, but their generosity was effortless. Time, patience, trust. At their rehearsal dinner, Robert had placed a small silver key in an envelope and slid it across the table. "You built your life together," he'd said. "Here's something to help you move forward." Inside was a key to a car, used, clean, reliable, titled in her name. It wasn't about the car. It was about what it meant. Trust.
Partnership.
Freedom. That night, Claudia caught her mother's expression across the table, tight, polite, assessing. Margaret smiled for the Carters, but her gaze flicked to Sabrina, a reflex sharper than envy. Claudia should have recognized it then for what it was, an early warning disguised as etiquette. The morning of the wedding, Margaret had stood behind her daughter, adjusting the veil with meticulous care. "You've always been so giving, darling," she said, smoothing the lace. "Don't lose that. It's what makes you special." Her perfume, heavy and sweet, filled the air until Claudia could hardly breathe. She smiled in the mirror, pretending not to understand the meaning behind the compliment. But part of her did. Some gifts were never meant to be shared. The reception glittered like a staged production. Laughter, glasses clinking, flashes from phones. Everyone playing their parts. Liam's hand rested gently on Claudia's back as they swayed through their first dance. For a fleeting moment, it almost felt safe, as if the world had agreed to behave. Then Margaret appeared, weaving through the crowd like a queen through courtiers, smile painted in pearls and control. She stopped beside them, voice pitched perfectly for nearby tables. "We're passing the car his parents gave you over to your sister." Every sound in the room dulled, the laughter, the music, even the breath in Claudia's chest. Sabrina appeared beside her mother, sequins catching the fairy lights like splinters of glass. "Relax," she said again, smiling for the cameras. "It's just a car." But Claudia knew it was never about the car. It was about every inch of her life that had been taken and repackaged as generosity. Every boundary turned into proof of her kindness. Her mother's face glowed with self-satisfaction, waiting for the expected response, the gracious daughter act. "You and Liam can manage with one," Margaret added lightly. "You've always been so practical." A photographer's flash captured the moment. Margaret's manicured hand on Claudia's arm, her smile wide, Claudia's eyes distant. In the photo, no one would see how her mother's fingers tightened, anchoring possession into flesh. Claudia said nothing. Liam's thumb brushed her wrist, a question disguised as comfort. "Are you okay?" She inhaled frosting and glass and every memory of obedience she'd ever swallowed. Then her father approached, sensing tension like a man approaching the weather. "What's going on?" Thomas asked, his tone weary. "Nothing serious," Margaret answered smoothly. "Just helping Sabrina out. She's had awful luck with cars." Sabrina laughed again, practiced as applause. "It's fine, Mom. She doesn't mind sharing." That word, sharing, landed like a bruise. Claudia thought of every time she'd surrendered, fixing Sabrina's resume, lending dresses that never came back, writing apologies on her sister's behalf. All of it had been branded as love. She smiled, small, calm, razor-sharp. "You're right," she said softly. "I don't mind sharing." Her mother relaxed, misreading surrender for peace. Liam didn't. His hand tightened around hers. Across the ballroom, fairy lights flickered. Cameras flashed. The air felt too still, like the instant before a storm. Claudia leaned close to Liam and whispered, "It's starting again." He looked at her, unsurprised, only ready. And in that silence, Claudia understood something new. They hadn't come to celebrate with her. They'd come to measure how much of her they still owned. Claudia's phone buzzed across the marble countertop, pulling her out of the delicate trance of designing. She hesitated before looking at the screen. "Mom." A soft sigh escaped her lips. She brushed a loose strand of hair behind her ear and answered, her tone steady but distant. "Hi, Mom." "Claudia, I was wondering if you've spoken to Sabrina lately," Margaret's voice began, sharp yet coated with artificial concern. "She mentioned you didn't come by last Sunday. We were expecting you." Claudia closed her laptop quietly. "I had a deadline. A client meeting." "Of course," her mother replied, with that familiar undercurrent of disapproval. "You always have something, don't you? Anyway, Sabrina got engaged last week. To Mark, the surgeon I told you about. You remember him from that charity dinner?" Claudia froze. "Engaged?"
"Yes."
"Isn't that wonderful?" Margaret's words rang with triumph, the kind that stung. "You should have seen the ring." And Sabrina looked radiant. "She said Liam couldn't make it either?" Claudia's throat tightened. Of course he couldn't. He'd been traveling more lately, saying it was for new design clients. She told herself to believe it. "I'll call and congratulate her," Claudia said softly.
"Good.
Families should support each other. You've been so distant, darling. I don't know what's going on with you two, but your sister's happiness might remind you what's possible when a woman knows what she wants." The jab landed clean. Claudia ended the call politely, but as the line clicked dead, her hand trembled slightly. That night, she found herself sitting alone on the patio, a glass of wine untouched beside her. Liam had texted, "Liam, sorry, running late again. Don't wait up." A simple message, but it hit differently this time. The same pattern, same phrasing. Her mind tried to dismiss it, but her intuition whispered otherwise. The city lights shimmered in the distance, as if mocking her quiet domesticity. She had built everything, her home, her business, her reputation, through hard work and discipline. But lately, something about Liam felt off. The late-night phone calls. The untraceable business trips. The guarded tone when she asked innocent questions. She wasn't a jealous woman, but she was observant. And tonight, observation began to stir something darker. Curiosity edged with dread. 2 days later, Claudia received an invitation from her mother for a family dinner to celebrate Sabrina's engagement. Margaret's note, handwritten and elegant, said, "Do dress appropriately, darling. Mark's parents will be there, and I'd like you to represent our family with grace. It's been a while since you reminded us of your charm." It was always like that, subtle manipulation wrapped in etiquette. Still, Claudia agreed. Something inside her told her this dinner would matter. The restaurant Margaret chose was one of those upscale places with soft piano music and too many mirrors. Claudia arrived early, wearing a simple but exquisite black silk dress. She caught her reflection, composed, poised, everything her mother expected, but the eyes staring back looked tired. Sabrina arrived late, glowing and theatrical, with Mark's arm proudly looped around hers. Her diamond ring sparkled aggressively under the chandelier. "Claudia," she squealed, kissing the air beside her sister's cheek. "I thought you'd bail again." "Congratulations," Claudia replied evenly, offering a restrained smile. "You look happy." "I am," Sabrina said, her gaze flicking toward Mark, then back to Claudia. "You and Liam should join us at the vineyard next month. It'll be like old times." "Liam's been traveling a lot lately," Claudia said, sipping her water.
"Ah, yes.
"The mysterious architect husband," Sabrina teased, smirking. "You two must keep things exciting." Their mother's laugh followed like a cue. "Sabrina, darling, behave." The evening continued with polite laughter and invisible tension weaving beneath every exchange. Claudia barely touched her food. Her eyes occasionally drifted to the restaurant's entryway, expecting, hoping, fearing. Liam didn't show. Halfway through dessert, Sabrina leaned closer, her tone low but slicing. "I saw Liam last week, actually, at the Harbor District. He was with a client, I think." Claudia turned slightly. "Oh, yes," Sabrina continued, twirling her spoon idly. "She was stunning. Tall, brunette, very chic. I almost went over to say hi, but didn't want to interrupt business." Claudia smiled faintly, pretending composure. "Of course." But inside, her pulse fluttered with unease. That night, she couldn't sleep. Her dreams tangled between memories and possibilities. Liam's laughter, his hands on hers, the promises they once whispered in a small Paris cafe. She woke up before dawn and walked into his office. His desk was neat, but one corner of the drawer was slightly ajar. Inside, she found a silver USB drive. Her breath caught. Liam wasn't careless with his things. Ever. She turned it over in her palm. No label. Just a small engraving, CNH Designs. Her curiosity warred with dread. She slid the USB into her laptop. Dozens of project folders appeared, but one stood out. Proposal_Venice_personal.
Click.
Her screen filled with images, interior sketches, layouts, hotel suites, each signed by Liam Carter and Harper Lennox, a name she hadn't heard before. Among the files was a document titled Private Notes. It wasn't part of any design work. Her chest tightened as she opened it. Client prefers an intimate tone. Focus on emotional connection. Weekend project meeting. Venice trip confirmed. Claudia unaware. Her heart pounded so loud, she thought the neighbors might hear it. The next morning, she sat in her studio, staring at a design board covered with swatches of velvet and marble textures. Normally, those visuals grounded her. Today, they mocked her. Tara, her assistant and friend, noticed the quiet. "You okay? You've redone that layout 3 times." Claudia looked up slowly. "Tara, have you ever felt like your whole life was being rewritten behind your back?" Tara frowned. "Claudia, what happened?" She hesitated, torn between vulnerability and pride. "I think Liam's hiding something. I found files, emails. A woman's name keeps appearing." Tara's expression hardened. "Do you want me to help you find out more?" Claudia nodded faintly. Not yet. I need to be sure first. But her voice betrayed uncertainty. That evening, Liam came home later than usual. He smelled faintly of new cologne, a different one. How was your day? He asked casually, setting down his briefcase. Quiet, Claudia replied, watching him closely. You? Long meetings, traffic, the usual chaos. She smiled thinly. You're working with Harper Lennox now, right? Liam's hand paused mid-motion.
What?
Where did you? Your Venice proposal files were on the drive. You left it in your drawer. The silence between them turned electric. She's just a consultant, Liam said quickly. We've been collaborating on a client pitch. Claudia tilted her head. Without mentioning it once? Interesting way to build trust. He sighed, rubbing his temples. Claudia, please. You're overreacting. I didn't think it mattered. It's business. She laughed once, quietly. Business that requires secret trips and hidden notes. Liam didn't answer. He walked past her, muttering, You're reading too much into things. But that night, when Claudia lay awake in the dark, she realized something had cracked, something that wouldn't mend easily. A week passed. Liam became more distant, his affection replaced by politeness. Claudia focused on her work, trying to keep her world intact. Then came the email. From Harper Lennox, subject, Venice confirmation, final details. Liam, I've booked our suite at the Palazzo. Same arrangement as before. Can't wait to continue where we left off.
H.
Claudia stared at the message, her pulse steadying with icy calm. She forwarded the email, to herself, to Tara, and to her private drive. Then she whispered to the empty room. Let's see how deep this really goes. The drive home felt nothing like the one Claudia had imagined when she planned her wedding. The city outside shimmered through raindrops streaking across the windshield, smearing the streetlights into molten gold. Liam drove in silence, his hand resting over hers on the console, a silent promise, or maybe an unspoken question neither dared to voice yet. She stared out the window, replaying every word, every look, every carefully hidden insult from the reception. Her mother's voice still echoed in her head, that falsely sweet tone that carried decades of quiet control. We're passing the car over to your sister. Even now, the sentence landed like a bruise that refused to fade. When they pulled into the driveway, Claudia exhaled a long breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. The porch light bathed their small home in warmth, their home, not a stage, not a mirror of anyone else's perfection. Liam switched off the engine and turned toward her. You were extraordinary tonight, he said softly. Claudia almost laughed. Extraordinary? I felt like I was burning alive. He smiled faintly. Sometimes fire is what saves us. Inside, the air smelled faintly of lavender and something familiar, safety. Claudia kicked off her shoes, the silk of her gown whispering against the tile. Her reflection caught in the kitchen window, the bride who didn't look broken, but reborn. The phone on the counter blinked with missed calls. Dozens.
Mom. Danielle.
Unknown numbers. Claudia turned it face down without hesitation. For once, she didn't owe anyone a response. Morning came pale and sharp. The world was quieter than she remembered. No buzzing phone. No guilt waiting at the edge of her bed. Liam had already left for a meeting, leaving a note by the coffee maker. Take today for yourself. You've earned it. She smiled faintly. The words felt like permission to breathe. Claudia brewed coffee, opened the curtains, and stood barefoot by the window, watching the sunlight pool across the floor. It should have felt ordinary. Instead, it felt like freedom disguised as routine. Her mind replayed last night in fragments, the way her mother's smile had cracked when the notarized declaration unfolded, the shock rippling through the guests, the stillness that followed. Claudia remembered her father's silence, the way his eyes flicked between his daughters, unsure where to stand. There had been no apology, of course. Grace Bennett didn't apologize. She rearranged narratives until guilt landed neatly on someone else's plate. And Danielle, sweet, fragile Danielle, would post a quote about forgiveness before lunch, as if hashtags could erase theft. Claudia took her mug and stepped onto the porch. The car gleamed in the driveway, sunlight kissing the silver paint. The car that was supposed to be gone. It wasn't just a vehicle anymore. It was a quiet monument to the line she'd drawn, a boundary etched in steel and dignity. She sipped her coffee and thought, I should feel vindicated. But the truth was messier. Underneath the calm, a small ache pulsed. Losing control of her family narrative meant losing the illusion that they might one day love her the way she needed. She whispered into the wind. I didn't lose them. I just stopped pretending they were mine. By evening, the messages began to change tone. Her mother's texts, once sharp and indignant, softened into apologies wrapped in guilt. We didn't mean to embarrass you. Danielle feels terrible. You know we've always wanted what's best for you. Claudia stared at the screen, reading between the lines. The words were just the same performance, with different lighting. She typed a single reply. Boundaries aren't betrayal, Mom.
They're self-respect.
Then she set the phone down, permanently on silent. 3 days later, an invitation arrived from her father.
Dinner.
Just a talk, he wrote in his looping, uncertain handwriting. Against her better judgment, she went. Closure sometimes needed a witness. The restaurant was quiet, dimly lit, the kind of place her parents loved for appearances. Her father was already seated, fidgeting with the corner of a napkin. When she sat down, his smile was thin but genuine. You look good, Claudia. Thanks, she said carefully. So do you. There was a long silence before he cleared his throat. Your mother's been upset.
You know how she is.
She just wanted to help Danielle. That's all. Help her? Claudia's laugh was soft but edged. By taking something that wasn't hers? That's not helping, Dad. That's a habit. He looked down, shame flickering in his eyes. Maybe you're right, but she doesn't see it that way. That's the problem, Claudia said. She never does. He hesitated, then reached into his jacket pocket, pulling out a folded photo, the wedding picture. Claudia mid-laugh, veil flowing, Evan's arm around her waist. Her mother stood in the background, smiling for the camera, but looking elsewhere. I want you to know, he said quietly, I was proud of you that night. The admission was small, yet heavy. It wasn't absolution, but it was something. Then why didn't you say anything? She asked. Because silence is what I was taught to give, he answered, voice trembling. And you thank God you finally stopped inheriting it. Something in Claudia loosened. She reached across the table, placed her hand over his. Then let's start unlearning it together. When she returned home that night, Liam was waiting on the couch, laptop open, the soft glow lighting his face. He closed it as she entered. How was it? Strangely human, she said, kicking off her heels. Dad tried honesty. It almost suited him. Liam chuckled, drawing her close. And your mother? Still rehearsing the role of the misunderstood matriarch. He kissed the top of her head. You can't rewrite everyone's script, love. I know, Claudia whispered. But I can stop performing in theirs. Weeks passed. The scandal faded. The whispers at work turned into admiration. Colleagues who once tiptoed around her now looked at her differently, like someone who dared to draw breath in a room that forbade it. Danielle sent a message one morning. A voice note. Claudia hesitated before pressing play. Claudia, her sister's voice trembled. I just wanted to say, I didn't realize how much I was taking. I thought love meant sharing. I see now it meant I never gave back. I'm sorry. The words weren't perfect. They weren't enough. But they were real. Claudia typed a brief reply. Thank you for saying that. I hope you mean it. Then she set the phone aside again, lighter this time. Spring unfurled quietly. Claudia returned to her studio, sketching designs for clients who trusted her sense of harmony. Patterns, colors, textures, they were all languages she could finally speak without interruption. One afternoon, Liam appeared in the doorway, holding an envelope. This came for you. She opened it carefully. Inside was a formal letter. Her parents were selling their old house. The one where every argument still echoed, every wall held ghosts of comparison and expectation. There was a handwritten note at the bottom. If you'd like any of your old things, Let us know before Friday. Claudia smiled faintly and shook her head. No, she murmured. I took everything I needed with me. Liam stepped forward. So, ready for that honeymoon drive yet? Absolutely. They packed light. 2 bags, 1 playlist, and the quiet kind of happiness that doesn't need to prove itself. As the car glided onto the open road, the city behind them shrank into a blur of noise and memory. Miles later, Claudia rolled the window down. The wind tangled through her hair, wild and ungoverned. She leaned back, letting laughter slip out. Pure, effortless. Liam glanced over. What's funny? Nothing, she said. Everything. The horizon stretched endless and forgiving. Ahead of them, the road shimmered like possibility itself. Claudia reached for his hand. You know, she said softly, people think freedom feels loud, like fireworks. But it's quieter than that. He looked at her. What does it sound like? She smiled. Like breathing for the first time. They drove until the sun dipped low, painting the world in copper and honey. Somewhere in that fading light, the girl who once apologized for taking up space finally disappeared, leaving only the woman who had learned how to stand her ground. And in that stillness between heartbeats, between what was stolen and what was reclaimed, Claudia Bennett finally found peace that didn't ask for permission.